Welcome to the Awakened Healer podcast. I'm your host, Mary Beth Vander Linden. I'm an ordained Christian minister, international intuitive healer, healer trainer, speaker, and retreat facilitator. On the Awakened Healer podcast, myself and a wide variety of fascinating guests will share our gifts and divine experiences. I won't shy away from diving deep and asking big questions during these conversations. In turn, we will open up and share our deepest thoughts on spirituality, angels, intuitive development, crystals, healing of all kinds, and how bridging ancient wisdom with modern science can bring you to a deep and profound healing in every area of your life. Welcome to another episode of Awakened Healer. This is your host, Mary Beth Vander Linden. I'm so excited today. I have as a guest Wendy Adair, and she's been a Facebook friend of mine for years, and so I know quite a bit about her, but we've never actually talked before. So we're going to have a chat, and you're going to be right in there with us. So she is a clinical hypnotherapist specializing in spirit releasement as well as other forms of psychopomp work, such as intuitive development and the invocation and communication with archetypal energies ranging from Archangel Michael to the, and I don't even know if I'm saying this right, the Hades? Hades. Thank you. And I'll let you say the other word too.
Persephone.
Okay, in the ancient Greek underworld. After completing a degree in psychology, she attended HCH Institute, a California state-accredited post-secondary vocational school that provides in-depth training in transpersonal hypnotherapy and energy practices. That's exciting. I didn't even know such a thing existed.
Yes.
Then she graduated from HCH as a hypnotherapist and continued her education with a clinical internship where she honed her skills working with clients. So throughout her 10 years of private practice, she's found that she's a psychopomp. Define, is it psychopomp?
Psychopomp. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Defined by Oxford's dictionary as a spiritual guide of a living person's soul. She serves as a liaison between worlds, releasing attached spirits, teaching intuitive development, and teaching others how to tap into the energy of angels, gods, ancestors, and the deceased. She's always known there's more to life than what we can see, and exploring what's beyond the veil on her own and with clients has brought profound experiences of many intensely rich worlds beyond imagination. And so that is quite the biography, and I'm so excited to visit with you about this. So welcome, Wendy.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's nice to hear your voice.
Yeah. It's so funny when you're just like typing things back and forth to actually be able to talk to each other. We should have done it years ago.
Yes, we should have.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of expertise in a lot of different areas, and I'm sure people are excited to hear about some of this stuff. Tell us, in what way have you been spirit-led through these experiences?
Well, I think we're all spirit-led all the time. I don't think there is a defining moment necessarily, but I would say definitely that becoming a hypnotherapist was led by spirit. I wandered into a past life regression workshop run by a hypnotherapist and came out of it absolutely. I felt high. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It was so amazing. And I think the reason I felt so strongly is because I knew that there were things beyond what we see, what we perceive as reality, but I didn't know how to reach them. I didn't know if I was just, I was always the weird kid. And I didn't know if it was just a symptom of that. Yeah, right. I feel like I might be at home.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was just a symptom of being that weird kid thing, or if it was a reality that there is more beyond us. And was it wishful thinking or was it true? And through that workshop, I found that it was true for me, for sure. And that propelled me into becoming a hypnotherapist myself. And during that training, I started really having experiences that felt more real than real.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. It really changed my life. Plus I've had experiences with the dead. I would not call myself a medium, as I don't work as a liaison usually between the dead and the living to provide messages and guidance in that regard. But I have had experiences with the dead, and before certain experiences in my life, I didn't know that's what I was having, if that makes sense.
Right.
I knew that there was something there, but I didn't know if it was my imagination or if it was something else or if it was real. And then once I started really sinking myself into an environment of spiritually led people, I started realizing, okay, this isn't just my imagination. I won't try and define what it is because I don't have that large a perspective being in a human body, but I definitely know that it's there and I can interact with it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. How did that make you feel, just knowing that you could interact?
Because I'm the weird kid and because I have always bent toward things that other people might perceive as dark. I'm using air quotes. I know you can't see it.
I'm feeling them.
It's strangely made me feel comfortable and safe to know that those things are real. They're not exactly the way I perceive them through books and movies and my imagination, but even though sometimes I have to tread with a little bit of caution, just knowing that they're real, that I'm not crazy,
Right.
And that I can interact with them to glean guidance, as well as to say, no, I put my boundaries up here. This is not what I want for my life. I learned a lot about what I do and do not want for my life, whether it's spiritual or daily.
Right. Well, this is very profound. You have here, I learned about the importance of not fearing the unexplained and how darkness can lead to healing, self empowerment, and positive transformation. I think that's extremely profound because I think most people are very scared. So, can you expand more on that?
Well, the first thing I'll say about that is I'll bring up the irony of being afraid, because that fear will actually bring those things toward you. And if you think about it in law of attraction terms, that makes total sense, because you're putting that energy into that fear, and so you're going to bring what you're fearing. So I have had experiences with entities that are not human. And I know that might sound a little odd, but okay, good. And I've had to be cautious.
Right.
But I've also learned that sometimes my fear is misplaced. I had an experience with a deceased person. I did not know was a deceased person at the time. I didn't know what was going on. Was waking me up. It was the only time I was in my, I was in my 30s when this happened, and I was mostly asleep, but not quite. And it felt like somebody ran their thumbnail up my spine in my bed. And there was no one else there. Woke me up completely. My eyes were as big as saucers, and I'm trying not to breathe because I thought someone was in my room. And once I realized that's not what it was, I was able to go back to sleep. And then I had some continuous experiences that bothered me and freaked out my cat. And once I understood what was really happening, I realized that any fear that I had was completely misplaced.
Okay.
I didn't understand what was happening completely at that time because I was too close to it. I went to a friend of mine who was a shaman, and I said, can you do the spirit releasement process? She trained with me, so she did that with me. Come to find out that it was just a guy who was lonesome, had never passed over into progression. And he saw that I could interact with energy, and he saw that I kind of would have liked to have had a significant other at the time, and he thought he would apply for the job. And I've decided I need to rewrite that job description as must have a living body. But I didn't understand that that's what was happening. All I know is I could,
yeah,
right. All I knew is that I could feel the sensation in my body of something around me that was intense. Mm-hmm. I mistook that for something that needed to be feared because you can't see what's happening. You can't use your standard senses to make sense of what's happening. So you go to fear. And it's understandable, but had I not taken a breath and said, okay, wait a minute, nothing's injured me, nothing's injured my cat, I'm good. So let's find out what's going on. And then once I found out, what I found was I ended up with a great deal of compassion for this energy, and the shaman and I helped him move forward, helped him meet with a loved one who had passed that he missed and move forward, never had an issue again.
Right. So they call you the modern day exorcist.
Yes.
And so kind of explain that a little bit. Through the Catholic Church, exorcisms are just something that's acknowledged, where some churches, have different beliefs about that and everything. So why do they call you the modern day exorcist? And as the modern day exorcist, what is it you do?
So I get called a modern day exorcist because I help people remove negative energies from their lives, mostly from attachments to the self. I don't do house clearings, that kind of thing. Other people can do that. But I help people remove the energy from themselves. It is a form of exorcism. I'm removing negative energy, and that's the crux of what an exorcism is. The intention behind that word, I think it's been Hollywood and the church have both kind of given that word. Exactly. Exactly.
So, that show?
Oh, yes. Yes. I actually love that movie.
I think it was called The Exorcist.
It was called The Exorcist. Yeah. And it was a great movie. One of my favorite horror movies. I love horror movies. I'm okay with this area, but I also understand that's not exactly how things work.
Yeah.
So it started because I was going through my hypnotherapy training, and there was a module called spirit releasement therapy. And I was like, ooh, having, somebody who's always been fascinated by ghosts and intuitive stuff. This just kind of like made me light up, like, oh, I can't wait to see what this is. And then we go into this module and we're going through the lecture and learning about what it is. And I'm going, really? Are you serious? And I'm not believing this. I'm like, okay, this is way too far for me.
Yeah. And
so, but then I told myself, whatever a client needs, whether I believe it or not, doesn't matter.
Right.
So then I took an advanced class in it after I graduated, and I had the same interpretation of this and the same feeling. If it works, I'll use it. And then as I was in my internship, the clients that were coming to me while I was doing my supervised internship were almost all spirit releasement clients. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then I started seeing, oh, maybe there's something to this. And when I had a client who could tell me things about myself that no one else knew,
right,
I thought, oh boy, okay, there is definitely something to this. And I will tell you, I was absolutely fascinated by the whole process. And so, yes, of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's just a dead person attached to you. It can mean a lot of different things, but that's how I got into it. So what I do is clients come to me and with whatever issue or concern they have, and we look at it. And a lot of times there are hints that energies have attached to that person and haven't let go, and it's influencing their life. And sometimes it's very minimal. Sometimes it's just, I don't feel like quite like myself. Sometimes it's a little more pronounced, where it can affect behavior and thought patterns. So somebody who's going through depression could become even more depressed. Somebody who's got an addiction can escalate in that addiction, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Because of the influence of presence of energy that isn't their own.
Right. And especially if that presence in their lifetime, if they were like a drug addict or an alcoholic or something, those energies can really expand.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
They've attached themselves to.
Right. Well, if somebody who's an addict has passed, and regardless of what they're addicted to, it can be a drug, it can be alcohol, it can be food, it can be sex, it can be anything, because you can make an addiction out of anything. Sure. So when they've passed, if they don't pass over, resolve their issues, do whatever happens in the afterlife that you perceive, they can attach to somebody who has a similar addiction, because they want that high again. They miss that, filling of that void or that high that they can't get anymore because they don't have a body.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, it's funny because I actually see energy, so I do see the entities or attachments. I call them entities, you call them attachments, and everything. And so, yeah, in oftentimes people will, experience, it can be mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical,
right?
Issues that come up from these attachments. How do you feel about this? I know, when I go to hospitals to do readings on patients for different doctors, or I go to the VA, or I go to a nursing home, but especially hospitals, they are just loaded with entities. And so, in bars, if you go to a bar,
right,
hospital, anywhere there's a real low vibration, they're just waiting and watching. They're like, "Ooh, this new sparkling
right."
Walk by, it's like a kid, and there's a new toy.
That's exactly it. Yes. Yes, I really think somebody should come up with the spiritual version of a hazmat suit, so you can wear something like that into a hospital. Or
I have one. Yeah. And so I teach all my clients how to ground zip up into their coconut. The coconut is the hazmat suit.
Okay, that's great.
So yeah, that's on my website under shop. And so, yeah, I tell them, even though you've grounded, zipped up, and gotten in your coconut in the morning, if you're going into one of these type of places, at least do your coconut again.
Right.
Then nothing can get to you. Like, your energy's your energy, their energy's their energy.
Right.
They're protected. But yeah, oftentimes I would get clients and they're like, oh, this is happening and that's happening. And I just feel almost like there's something other than me causing it. And I'm loaded with entities.
Right.
But in my mind, spirit will show me rows of hospital beds, rows and rows of beds. And I'm like, you must have been visiting at a hospital. And, and you're like, no, I actually work in one. I'm like, you need to get your hazmat suit on, get on your coconut every single morning before you get in there. So yeah. So real low energy places, if you work there, or you're, have a relative that's living in a assisted facility or in a hospital, you better have protection on, because they are looking for something of a higher vibration. And you could very well bring home a friend.
Good. Yes. The first time that ever happened to me that I was aware of it, I was in New Orleans, and I had gone on, it was called Ghost Expeditions, and it was run by paranormal researchers, and they would take groups of people and show them the basics of how to do a paranormal investigation. and went through this experience, and it was a wonderful experience. And it went from very feelings of that were very loving and maternal to darker, much darker feelings in this one space. It was really a life-changing experience for me. And went back to my hotel, and I felt that a little boy had come home with me. And knowing what I know now, because I was not quite at that space where it was a couple of years before I took that first workshop and then got involved in things, and now I can recognize things quickly and, okay, that's what it is. But I couldn't do that then. And I thought that I was imagining things, but I know that that's the first time that I'm aware of that I picked up an entity, and it came home with me. It was not attached to me, but it did follow me home to the hotel.
A lot of times also, people will purchase something, like at a secondhand store, at an auction or a state sale, and they're bringing home something. They're not aware. Antiques are loaded with entities a lot of times and everything. So I never bring anything like secondhand into my house without doing it. Or I don't even put it in my car. I clear it right in the parking lot.
Right.
Put it in my car.
Right.
And everything. So yeah, I do house clearings, land clearings, business clearings. And a lot of times, they've brought stuff in through something they purchased. I even had a client call me a couple weeks ago. And I'm like, oh dear, and they go, yeah, I knew right away. And here they had ordered like a antique through the mail. It was like a toy or something. And when it was delivered, they were just so excited that it came, and they just ripped open the package, and lo and behold, as soon as they did, they started feeling sick, and they knew right away. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, anything, because energy can move anywhere. It can attach to anything. We are all versions of energy, so there's no limit to what can be attached to.
Right, yeah. These are just some of the most common things, is like the hospitals, nursing homes, and then antiques, that you bring secondhand stuff, because God only knows like what energy those things have been in. And a lot of people, they say like, yeah, well, that's easy for you to say, you can read energy. I can't, but if they really think about it, almost everybody has had the experience where maybe they've gone to somebody's house, and as soon as that person opens the door, even though they have a smile on their face, you can just feel this thick, heavy energy, like you could cut it with a knife, and you're like, oh God, they were fighting.
Right.
And so that is reading energy. So in our everyday lives, we do it all the time. We just don't realize that's what we're doing. So, well, Wendy, this has been really fascinating. I loved having you on. I'm sure the listeners got a lot out of it. Tell people, how can they contact you?
They can go to my website at www.modernexorcist.com. And there's a box there that they can click to contact me and get more information about the various types of services I offer. I do offer, what I do is clearing of people through hypnosis versus intuitive process, although I am intuitive myself, so that does help. But what I really like about using the hypnosis is that the client also gets to interact with that energy, find out why it attached, when it attached, what caused it to attach, and help it move into progression. So it's a way of teaching people about spiritual cleanliness, spiritual health, how to potentially not have that happen in the future, or have it happen as infrequently as possible, because each person should be able to live a life without being influenced by other energy.
Exactly.
And it isn't just deceased people. I also deal with the darker things, like a demonic presence. And of course, everybody's imagination goes immediately to demons, like we see in movies. It isn't quite the same thing. And this is a non-denominational, non-religious way of going about this. So whether you have a faith or don't have a faith and prefer not having a faith, it'll work. So if you feel like, hey, something's not right, or you catch yourself talking in the third person, saying something like, oh yeah, we thought we would go to the park today, when you normally wouldn't say we, and you aren't, the part of the British monarchy, then there might be an issue there. So you can always contact me and we can have a consultation. I do require a consultation for spirit releasement. And the reason for that is because people who have been diagnosed with mental health issues such as schizophrenia and a couple of others, it may actually be schizophrenia. And to perform spirit releasement on a person who's been diagnosed with schizophrenia can actually make things worse for that person. Yeah. So you really want to be careful. So if you think this is an issue for you and would like to contact me, I'd be more than happy to have a consultation phone call with you to talk about if it's the right process for you.
Very good. Well, Wendy, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time and all the information that you gave the listeners, and you have a blessed day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for joining me on the Awakened Healer podcast. Did you enjoy the show? If yes, please subscribe and give me 5 on a review, that is, on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a review or your comments and let me know what you loved or would love to learn about on future shows. We all need encouragement, including me. Find out more information on my website at spiritledhealinginstitute.com. Be blessed, and remember, if you're good with you and good with God, you're good.